It was early morning, that gentle hour when the world feels half asleep, when sunlight leaks through windows like shy promises. The sound of bird brush against the hum of distant engines, and in that soft blur between silence and noise, an 8-year-old girl named Mia tightened the straps of her backpack. Her shoes were too big for her, hand-me-downs from her cousin, and they squeaked every few steps as she walked down the cracked pavement. The street was quiet, but not safe, the kind of quiet that made your heart beat louder than it should be. She kept glancing behind her, once, twice, then again. It wasn't monsters she feared. It was people, or rather, one person, a man who always seemed to appear when she walked alone. His car would crawl slowly beside her, windows rolled halfway, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He never said anything, and maybe that was worse. Mia's fingers dug into the straps of her backpack as she whispered to herself, just a few more blocks. The school gate shimmered in the distance like a finish line she might not reach in time. That was when the low rumble of engines broke through the morning stillness. A group of bikers, leather jackets, tattoos, roaring Harleys, turned the corner. They were the kind of people everyone crossed the street to avoid. Everyone except Mia. She stopped walking. For a second, they looked like thunder rolling down asphalt, loud, untamed, impossible to ignore. But in her little heart, she felt something unexpected. Hope. She stepped closer. Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads. The leader of the bikers, a man named Rex, spotted her first. He pulled off his helmet, revealing a face that looked carved by years of wind and road. His beard was streaked with gray, but his eyes held a softness that didn't fit the stereotype. "Hey, kid," he said, voice gravelly yet warm. "You okay?" Mia hesitated, her little hands trembling. Could you walk me to school?" The group exchanged puzzled looks. Behind their inked arms and worn jackets, they weren't used to being asked for protection, at least not by children. Rex crouched down, meeting her eyes. "Why, sweetheart?" Her gaze dropped to the ground. "There's a man. He follows me sometimes." The street went silent except for the idle purr of motorcycles. One of the bikers, a woman named Tessa, took a step forward. "You mean today?" Mia nodded, her lips quivering. Without a word, Rex stood and slipped his helmet back on. "Boys, we're talking a detour." Mia blinked. "So, you'll walk me?" He smiled beneath the shadow of his visor. "Better, we'll ride beside you." The engines ignited again, and for the first time that week, the little girl's fear was drowned out by thunder. They moved like a protective wall, Mia in the middle, walking her small steps, and 6 roaring bikes flanking her on both sides. People peeked from shop windows. Some smiled, some filmed, others simply stared. The sight was strange, almost cinematic, a child guarded by outlaws. When they reached the school gate, Rex killed his engine and leaned down. "You see him anyway?" Mia looked around. The usual car, the one with tinted glass, was gone. She smiled, the kind of smile that trembled between relief and disbelief. "No, it's not here." Rex exhaled slowly, then nodded. "Good. You're safe now." As a bell rang in the background, Mia whispered, "Thank you." Then she ran through the gates, her backpack bouncing behind her like a small heartbeat. The bikers stayed there for a moment, engines still, hearts heavy, before turning back toward the road. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. The next morning, the same group showed up again, uninvited, unasked for, but determined. Mia's mother, Grace, stood on the porch, stunned. "Who are you people?" Rex removed his helmet again. "Just friends," he said simply. "She asked for help once. We don't like leaving promises half done." Grace looked at her daughter, then back at the group. Her eyes softened. "You're the biker club from over on Willow Street, aren't you?" "Used to be," Rex said. "Now we're more of a community watch, I guess." From that day on, every morning, the sound of engines marked Mia's safe passage to school. The neighbors started waving. Shopkeepers nodded. Even the crossing guard began saving them a spot at the curb. But what none of them knew, not yet, was that the story wasn't just about protection. It was about redemption, too. And for Rex, that redemption had been a long time coming. Rex hadn't planned to care this much. He wasn't the kind of man who stuck around for anyone. Most people in town still remember the old days, the fights, the nights he stumbled out of bars, the recce calls that nearly took a life. That was before the club fell apart, before the guilt hollowed him out and made the road his only home. But somehow, this little girl with a trembling voice had cracked something open inside him, something he thought the years had buried under exhaust fumes and regret. The second morning, when they rode again, he watched Mia from behind his visor. She was humming now, not nervously, but playfully, swinging her backpack like it was the safest place on earth. That tiny sound, that small flicker of normal childhood, felt like redemption taking its first breath. Tessa, riding beside him, called over the rumble, "You realize you started something, right?" Rex grunted. "Started what?" "A movement," she smirked. "A bunch of broken bikers becoming bodyguards for an 8-year-old? Come on, that's storybook stuff." He didn't answer, maybe because part of him wanted it to be true. Later that week, Grace walked out to greet them with 2 thermoses of coffee. "For the ride," she said shyly. "You don't have to do this every morning." Rex took the coffee, his gloved hand dwarfing the thermos. "We know," he said, "but someone's got to show that creep she's not alone." Grace hesitated, her eyes shining with quiet gratitude. "Thank you. She sleeps better now. I sleep better too." Behind her words was a story she wasn't ready to tell. The absence of a father, the unpaid bills, the long shift that left Mia walking alone. Rex noticed the tiredness in her face, the way her smile was something she had to wear, not something that came naturally. As they left, Tessa glanced at him. "You okay?" Rex gave a slow nod. "Just thinking." "About the girl." "About the world," he said, "and how it lets kids grow up afraid." That night, Rex sat in the small garage behind his trailer, surrounded by broken bike parts and the faint hum of an old radio. He opened a dusty box labeled Danny. Inside were newspaper clippings, a faded photo of a boy, maybe 10 years old, holding a helmet too big for his head. The headline read, "Local biker's son injured in crash, father facing charges." Rex traced the photo with his thumb. His son hadn't spoken to him in 12 years, and every time he saw Mia smile, it reminded him of the boy who used to run to the curb when he heard his father's engine coming home. Except one night, Rex never came home. He leaned back, eyes glassy under the dim light. "Guess I owe the universe one," he whispered. The next morning, when they arrived to escort Mia, a few kids from school gathered at the gate, pointing and giggling. "Cool, you got a biker gang," one of them shouted. Mia smiled proudly. "They're my friends." And just like that, the fear that once shadowed her became a story others envied. One of the teachers, Mrs. Coldwell, walked over to Grace later that day. "Your daughter's quite the local celebrity," she said kindly. "Half the school's talking about her biker bodyguards." Grace chuckled softly. "Yeah, she's braver than I'll ever be." The teacher nodded. "Maybe so, but I think bravery runs in the family." That afternoon, the bikers waited a few extra minutes after Mia entered school. They didn't say it out loud, but every one of them was watching for the car. That car. And then, right on cue, it appeared. A gray sedan, tinted windows, crawling down the opposite side of the street. Rex's jaw tightened. "There he is," he muttered. Tessa revved her engine once, deliberately. The others followed, 6 machines roaring in perfect sync. The car hesitated, stopped, then rolled backward before speeding away. They didn't chase it. They didn't need to. Message delivered. But something in Rex's chest burned hotter than the engine beneath him. It wasn't just anger, it was purpose. For the first time in years, his life had a reason again. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. That evening, Rex found himself back at the garage. The photo of his son still sat on the table. He looked at it for a long time before pulling out his phone, a beat-up old flip model, and scrolling through names he hadn't called in years. His thumb hovered over Danny. He didn't press it. Not yet. Instead, he whispered into the quiet. Soon, kid. Real soon. And somewhere down the street, the faint sound of a little girl's laughter floated through the night, like a reminder that maybe not all second chances come with words. Some come with engines and courage and an 8-year-old's trust. The next morning, something unexpected would happen, something that would test just how far kindness could really go. By the end of that week, everyone knew about the bikers who guarded a little girl to school. The morning news caught a glimpse. Someone posted a photo online, and suddenly, Mia's quiet street became a symbol of unexpected safety. Neighbors began stepping out earlier, waving as the bikes rolled by. But for Rex and his crew, it wasn't about attention. It was about routine, a promise they'd made silently, sealed with rumbling engines and shared glances. That Friday morning, the air smelled like rain. The sky was bruised gray, clouds hanging low enough to touch. Mia waited on her porch, hood pulled up, backpack snug. Grace kissed her forehead and whispered, "Remember, sweetheart, just straight to class today." "I know, Mom," she said with a grin. "They'll be waiting." And they were, lined up like sentinels, engines idling, raindrops glistening on chrome. When she reached them, Rex bent slightly, his voice muffled through his helmet. "You ready, kiddo?" Mia nodded. "Ready." And with that, they rode, slow, careful, protective, through puddles that reflected headlights like flickers of gold. Children peeked through car windows. Parents smiled despite themselves. The world outside might have been gray, but around Mia, there was color. That morning felt different, though. Something in the air, an unease that Rex couldn't name. As they approached the intersection before the school, a car suddenly swerved out of a side street, tires screeching, cutting too close to Mia. Rex's instincts took over. He gunned the throttle, pulling in front of her. The bike skidded slightly, water splashing across his boots. The car halted, and when the window rolled down, that same man's face appeared, the one with the dark glasses. For a second, everything froze. The rain, the breath in Rex's chest, the reflection of fear in Mia's eyes. Then, quietly but firmly, he spoke. "You're done here." The man's jaw twitched. "It's not what you think." Rex stepped off the bike, boots thudding against wet asphalt. "Then tell me what I should think." The man's gaze flickered. Then he threw the car in reverse and sped off, wheels spinning. The roar of the bikes followed him for a block before Rex raised his hand, a signal to let him go. He didn't need revenge. He needed distance between that car and the little girl who now clung to Tessa's jacket, trembling but safe. When they finally reached the school, the principal came rushing out, eyes wide. "Is everything all right?" Rex nodded curtly. "She's fine. Just some idiot who doesn't know how to drive." But Mia tugged his sleeve. That was him, wasn't it? He looked at her, really looked, then knelt. "Yeah, but he won't come back. You've got too many people watching over you now." Her eyes softened, and she whispered, "You promise?" He smiled faintly. "Cross my heart, little one." She hesitated, then reached into a pocket and pulled out a small pink bracelet, the kind made with tiny beads. "Then take this, so you don't forget." Rex looked down, speechless. The bead spelled one word, brave. He wrapped it carefully around his gloved wrist. "Guess I'll have to live up to that now." She giggled and ran off toward the gate, rain still falling in soft silver streaks. By that evening, the story had gone viral. A local reporter showed up outside Rex's garage. "So, can you tell us why you're doing this?" Rex sighed, wiping grease off his hands. "Because she asked." "Just that?" the reporter pressed. "Yeah," he said, eyes steady. "Sometimes that's all it takes, someone asking." The interview aired that night. Comments flooded in, some mocking, most inspired. The headline read, "Bikers become guardian for schoolgirl after scare." For Rex, it wasn't fame, it was weight. Because the more people knew, the more it meant he couldn't stop. Not yet. Not while there were still girls walking streets alone, waiting for someone to keep a promise. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. The following Monday, a surprise waited for them. As they pulled up to Mia's house, half the neighborhood stood outside. Parents, shopkeepers, even police officers. Someone had printed a banner that read, "Thank you for protecting our kids." Grace was crying before she even spoke. "She's not just safe now," she said softly to Rex. "She's proud." Rex's throat tightened. "Good. She should be." Then, something he didn't expect, a small boy approached him shyly, clutching a lunchbox. "Mister, can you walk me to?" Rex froze. The boy's eyes, his voice, it was like looking at his own son again, all those years ago. He knelt down slowly, voice breaking just enough to sound human again. "Yeah, kid, we can do that." And as the engines roared once more, the street filled not with fear, but with a kind of music only kindness could make. The mornings became a ritual. The bikes, the laughter, the smell of gasoline and hope mixing in the cold air. Every day, more kids joined the walk. What began as one frightened girl became a parade of courage led by thunder. Even the principal started standing by the gate just to wave them in. But peace never lasts forever. One late afternoon, as Rex was locking up the garage, a voice came from behind him, a voice that made him freeze mid-turn. "Didn't think I'd see you on the news, Dad." Rex spun around. There, standing at the entrance, was Danny, taller now, older, wearing a mechanic's jacket with a logo of a nearby shop. His hair was darker, but those same storm-gray eyes, Rex's eyes, stared back at him. "Danny," Rex's voice cracked like gravel. How'd you? "Facebook," his son said coldly. "You guarding some random kid now? That your new thing?" Rex swallowed hard. "It's not like that. She needed." "So did I." Danny snapped, fists clenching. "You remember that? You were supposed to pick me up that night. Instead, you picked a fight with a bottle." Silence felt like a punch. The hum of a flickering bulb filled the space between them. Rex stepped closer. "I've made mistakes. I know that. I live with it every day." Danny's jaw tightened. "Then keep living with it, old man. Don't try fixing your soul through someone else's kid." He turned to leave. Rex's voice followed softly. "I'm not trying to fix myself, son. I'm just making sure no other kid feels abandoned when they need someone." Danny paused at the doorway, breathing unevenly, but he didn't look back. When he was gone, Rex sat heavily on the stool, elbows on his knees, the pink bracelet glinting faintly under the weak light. He whispered to the empty room, "You're right, kid. I wasn't there. But maybe I can be now, for someone." The next morning, Mia noticed he wasn't smiling like before. She tugged his jacket. "You okay, Mr. Rex?" He forced a half-smile. "Just tired, sweetheart." She nodded, serious in that way only children can be. "My mom says when people are tired in their hearts, they need someone to believe in them." That hit deeper than she could ever know. By the time they reached the school, the world felt lighter again. Mia waved, ran off with her friends, and Rex sat on his bike longer than usual, watching her disappear through the gates. Behind him, Tessa said quietly, "You thinking about calling him?" Rex didn't answer, but his hand brushed the bracelet, the small word brave glowing against his leather glove. That night, Grace came by the garage with dinner packed in a tinfoil tray. "You shouldn't have to eat cold sandwiches every night," she said, smiling softly. Rex chuckled. "You don't have to." "I want to," she interrupted. "You've done more for us than anyone else ever has." They sat on overturned crates, eating by the glow of a small lamp. Grace told him stories about Mia's drawings, about how she wrote an essay titled "My Heroes Ride Motorcycles." Rex laughed for the first time in days. "Guess that makes us famous now." Grace smiled, then stuttered him quietly. "You ever have kids, Rex?" He froze. The question was simple, but it cut deep. "I did," he said softly. "Haven't seen him in a long time." "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded. "Me too." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was gentle, the kind that understands pain without needing to explain it. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. 2 days later, the town organized a small event outside the school, Community Safety Day. There were balloons, coffee stands, and a banner thanking the Guardians. When Rex arrived, kids rushed up to him for photos. Mia ran straight into his arms, laughing. They made you a hero. He looked around at the smiling faces, the grateful parents, the life he never thought he'd touch again, and for a second, he felt peace. But in the back of the crowd, he saw him, Danny, standing still, arms crossed, watching. Their eyes met. No anger this time, no coldness, just a quiet question between two souls trying to remember what love used to feel like. Rex gave a small nod. Danny didn't move, but his lips twitched, almost a smile. And for the first time in 12 years, Rex dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, forgiveness was closer than he thought. What neither of them knew was that fate was about to test that forgiveness, harder than either could imagine. The following week felt like calm before a storm, that deceptive stillness where life pretends to settle before it changes everything. The bikers still escorted Mia every morning. The town kept smiling. Danny began stopping by the garage, not to talk, but just to be there. Sometimes he'd tinker with an engine while Rex worked on another. Silence did the healing words couldn't. But one evening, the sky turned the color of bruises. The wind carried tension. Grace was running late from work, and Mia, eager to help, begged the neighbor to let her walk home alone. "It's just 3 blocks," she said, "and they always say I'm brave." By the time Grace realized what her daughter had done, the streetlights were already flickering on. Mia's small sneakers slapped against the damp pavement. The world felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest. She pulled her jacket tighter. Every shadow felt alive. Then she heard it, the low purr of an engine behind her. Not the thunder she knew, not Rex's roar. This one was soft, smooth, and terrifyingly familiar. The gray sedan. She froze. Her little heart hammered as headlights stretched a shadow long across the road. The car slowed beside her. The window rolled down. That same man, the one who'd followed her before, leaned slightly out. "Hey, sweetheart," he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Your mom asked me to pick you up." Mia shook her head, stepping back. "You're lying." He sighed. "Come on now. Don't make this hard." Her backpack slipped as she ran. But fear has a way of tripping even the brave. She stumbled, scraping her knee, crying out as a car door opened behind her. Then the sound that split the night. Engines. Multiple. The roar of bikes flooded the street like thunderclaps. Headlights flared. Tires screeched. Rex's Harley cut between Mia and the car just as Tessa's bike swerved to block the road. "Touch that door," Rex growled, "and you'll be picking your teeth off the pavement." The man froze. His fake smile vanished. Then, panicking, he threw the car in reverse and sped off, tires screaming. Rex jumped off his bike, dropping to his knees beside Mia. "You okay?" His hands were shaking harder than hers. She nodded through tears. I was so scared." "I know," he whispered, pulling her close. "But you're safe now. You hear me? You're safe." Tessa called the police while Rex held Mia, rocking her gently as sirens wailed in the distance. The rain began again, light and cold, washing the blood from her scraped knee. When Grace arrived, breathless and crying, she collapsed beside them. "Oh my God! Mia!" Mia clung to her, sobbing. "He came back, Mom, but they saved me." Grace looked at Rex, her eyes overflowing with both terror and gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you." Rex shook his head. "Don't. Just hold her tight." That night, the police caught the man 2 towns over. Turns out he'd been following kids from multiple schools. When word spread, the community's gratitude turned into awe. The Guardians weren't just a local story anymore. They were heroes. Rex didn't care about the news vans or the cameras that showed up the next morning. He only cared that Mia slept soundly again. But when he looked at Danny, who'd come running the moment he heard the sirens, something inside him shifted. Danny was the one holding Mia's bike upright while Rex comforted her. Danny, who had once said, "Don't fix yourself through someone else's kid." Yet here he was, quietly helping. Later that night, outside the garage, Danny finally spoke. "You really did it, old man." Rex sighed. "Did what?" "Became the dad every kid wishes they had." Rex swallowed hard. "I wasn't, though. Not for you." Danny's eyes softened. "Maybe you are now. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive, if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply." The following morning, the town gathered again, this time not for celebration, but for unity. The mayor herself came to thank the bikers. The local news called it the day the Guardian saved a child. When they asked Mia what she wanted to say to the men and women who protected her, she stepped up to the microphone, voice trembling. "I just want to say thank you," she said, looking at Rex. "You didn't just walk me to school. You walked me away from being scared forever." The crowd went silent, then erupted in applause. Rex's chest tightened. He tried to smile, but emotion choked him. He caught Danny's gaze through the crowd. This time, his son smiled first. Rex whispered under his breath, voice barely audible over the applause, "Guess we're both learning how to be brave." But deep inside, he knew there was one thing left unfinished, something he needed to say before life moved on. That night, after the applause had faded and the town returned to its quiet rhythm, Rex sat alone in his garage. The pink bracelet still circled his wrist, faintly glowing under the lamplight. He rubbed it absent-mindedly, staring at a blank sheet of paper. The noise of the world outside had calmed. No sirens, no engines, just the creak of the cooling metal and the sound of rain tapping against the window. On the workbench beside him lay a photograph of Danny at age 10, wearing that same grin Mia had when she laughed. Rex picked up the pen. His hand trembled. Then slowly, he began to write. "Danny, I don't expect you to read this. Maybe you never will. But there are words that don't fit in a mouth anymore. They have to live on paper. You were the best thing I ever had, and I lost you because I was too weak to love anything properly. Every beer I drank was another mile between us. I can't undo the crash, the shouting, the years of silence. But if you've seen that little girl, maybe you understand why I'm trying now. She looks at me the way you used to, before I broke it all. I guess I'm just trying to earn back the sound of your voice. If you can't forgive me yet, I get it. But I'm here, sober, still breathing, still trying. Maybe that counts for something." The ink smudged when a tear fell on the page. Rex chuckled bitterly. "Guess I'm still a mess," he muttered. He folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and wrote a name he hadn't written in years. Danny. Then he just sat there, staring at it, like it might vanish if he blinked too long. The next morning, Grace stopped by with a paper bag. "Mia made you breakfast," she said, smiling. She insisted. Rex opened the bag to find a peanut butter sandwich, cut into the shape of a heart. He couldn't help but laugh softly. "She's got good taste." Grace watched him for a moment. "You look tired, Rex. You should rest." "Can't," he said. "Got too much thinking to do." Her gaze softened. "You're carrying a lot, but you don't have to do it alone." He met her eyes, and for the first time, let his walls crack a little. "Maybe I don't know how to stop." Grace stepped closer, her voice quiet. "Then start small. Let someone in again." She turned to leave but stopped at the door. "By the way, Danny came by the house this morning. Said he wanted to talk to you." Rex froze. "He did?" She smiled. "Yeah, I think he's ready to listen." Rex found his son at the edge of town, sitting on a bench outside the old diner. The same diner they used to visit after Sunday rides, back when life was still simple. He approached slowly. Danny didn't look up right away. When he finally did, his expression wasn't angry anymore, just tired, but softer. "I read it," Danny said. Rex blinked. "What?" "The letter. Mom dropped it off of me before she, you know." He shrugged. "Guess she thought I needed to see it." Rex's chest tightened. "You weren't supposed to." Danny cut him off. "I'm glad I did." They sat in silence for a while, the air thick with things neither knew how to say. Then Danny spoke again, voice low. "I used to tell myself I didn't care, that I hated you. But when I saw what you did for that girl, I realized hate doesn't last that long unless love's hiding underneath it. Rex swallowed hard. I don't deserve forgiveness, son. Danny looked at him, eyes glassy but steady. Maybe not, but I think I need to give it anyway, for both of us. Rex's hands trembled as he reached across the table. Danny hesitated, then gripped his father's hand tight. For a long moment, no words were needed. Two lives, broken by years of silence, finally met in the middle. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. That night, they rode together for the first time in over a decade. Danny borrowed one of the old bikes, the engine coughing to life under his touch. The sound echoed across the quiet streets like the heartbeat of something reborn. Mia and Grace stood on their porch, watching as father and son disappeared down the road, side by side, lights glowing against the night. For the first time in his life, Rex wasn't running from his past. He was riding with it. But as he glanced over at his son, wind in their faces, stars above, engines humming in unison, he knew something profound. Forgiveness wasn't the end of his story. It was a beginning. The next morning arrived with sunlight that looked almost deliberate, gold spilling across the wet streets, painting everything new. The whole town seemed softer somehow. People who once crossed the street to avoid the bikers now waved when they passed. Shop owners brought out coffee. Kids yelled, "The Guardians!" like it was a name sung by heroes in a storybook. For Rex, it didn't feel like fame. It felt like peace, a kind he hadn't known since before Danny stopped calling him Dad. That Saturday, Grace called. "We're holding a fundraiser at the school," she said. "They want to thank you and the others, maybe build a proper crossing guard post, more lights, things that make kids feel safe." Rex chuckled softly. "You mean, so they don't need a pack of bikers every morning?" Grace laughed. "Something like that." He hesitated. "You sure you want me there? The cameras, the people." "I think," she said gently, "they want a man who showed them courage isn't about looking clean. It's about showing up when it matters." Rex stayed at the phone for a long moment after the call ended. Showing up when it matters. That was something he'd once failed at, and something he never planned to fail again. That evening, Rex and Danny met at the garage. The crew was already there, cleaning bikes, joking, teasing. The once rough voices now carried warmth instead of anger. Tessa leaned against a post, smirking. So, the legend returns with his long-lost heir. Danny rolled his eyes. "You mean the guy who still owes me a spark plug?" Rex chuckled, shaking his head. "Don't push your luck, kid." Tessa grinned. "Feels like family around here again." The room fell quiet for a second, not because anyone was sad, but because it was true. The word family didn't sting anymore. It felt earned. The fundraiser day came bright and loud. Kids painted signs that said, "Thank you, Guardians." The mayor gave speeches. Local businesses donated helmets and reflective gear. It was small-town love at its purest, raw, imperfect, beautiful. When it was Rex's turn to speak, he hesitated at the microphone, helmet tucked under one arm. The crowd quieted. He looked at Mia first, her bright eyes, her pink bracelet now faded from wear. Then at Danny, standing in the back, arms crossed but smiling proudly. "I'm not good with speeches," Rex began. "But I used to think kindness was something soft, something for people who never fell apart. I was wrong. Turns out kindness is what saves people like us after we fall apart." A hush fell over the crowd. I spent too long being angry at the world, and myself. But then one little girl looked up at me and asked for help. And she didn't see a criminal or a failure. She just saw someone who could walk her to school. He paused, voice tightening. Sometimes, that's all we need. One person who believes we can still be good. Mia's mom wiped a tear. Danny looked away, pretending something was in his eye. And if there's anyone out there who thinks they've gone too far to make things right, Rex said, his voice steady again, "Don't believe it. The road's still there. Just ride it back." The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was emotional, a wave of clapping that felt like forgiveness being passed around hand to hand. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll past. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." After the fundraiser ended, the sun dipped low, painting everything in amber. Mia ran up to Rex and Danny, holding a crumpled drawing. "It's us," she said proudly. The picture showed stick figures, a little girl, 2 men, and a row of motorcycles with hearts drawn around them. Across the top, in shaky pink letters, she'd written, "Brave looks like this." Rex knelt beside her, smiling through the lump in his throat. "You're something special, kid." "You too," she said. Then after a pause, "You're not going to stop writing, right?" He shook his head. "Never. Not as long as there's someone who needs to feel safe." Grace walked up then, her voice soft. "You gave her back her childhood, Rex. That's not something people forget." Rex looked at her, and for the first time, his smile didn't hide pain. "She gave me something too," he said. "A reason to wake up and not look back." That night, as the last light faded, Rex rode home with Danny following close behind. The wind whipped at his jacket. The road stretched endless ahead, not as an escape, but as a promise. He thought about Mia, Grace, his crew, and the long road that had somehow led him here. And for the first time in his life, the road didn't feel like running. It felt like going home. The next morning was quieter than usual. No cameras, no reporters, no fuss. Just sunlight spilling across cracked asphalt and the faint hum of distant traffic. The storm had passed, in every sense. Mia was already waiting on her porch, backpack ready, her pink bracelet replaced by a new one she'd made, blue and black beads this time. "For you," she said when Rex pulled up. "It's biker colors." Rex laughed softly, taking it. Perfect fit. He slipped it beside the old one, both glinting against his worn glove. Danny parked behind him, engine still rumbling. "You ready, kiddo?" he called. Mia nodded, smiling wide. "Let's ride." And so, like every morning before, they began their journey. The difference now was invisible but powerful. The fear that once walked beside her had vanished, replaced by something stronger, trust. Neighbors waved. Shopkeepers smiled. Even the crossing guard saluted as the bikers rolled past. For a man who'd once lived in the shadows, Rex realized this. This sunlight, this laughter, was redemption disguised as routine. When they reached the school gate, Mia turned back, hesitating for a moment. "Hey, Mr. Rex." "Yeah." "You're gonna keep helping other kids too, right?" Rex smiled. "You bet, sweetheart." She grinned, that innocent kind of joy that mends everything broken, and ran toward the playground. Free, fearless, whole. He watched her go, then felt a hand on his shoulder. Danny stood there, helmet under his arm, eyes bright in the morning light. "You did it, old man." Rex shook his head. "We did." Danny smiled. "So what now?" Rex looked at the horizon, the endless stretch of road that had once felt like punishment but now looked like promise. "Now," he said, "we ride for the ones still walking alone." Weeks passed. The Guardians became something larger than their little town. Messages poured in from schools, parents, and even other biker groups wanting to join. What started as one girl's plea had become a movement of protection and kindness. Rex didn't like to call it a cause. To him, it was a duty. One afternoon, he received a letter in the mail. No sender, just his name scrawled in familiar handwriting. Inside was a short note. "Dad, I found an old photo of us. I thought you'd want it back. I'm proud of what you're doing. Let's ride again soon. Love, Danny." Folded inside was that picture from years ago, the boy with the too big helmet, grinning at the camera. Rex stared at it for a long time before whispering, "Looks like we finally made it, kid." He pinned the photo to the garage wall, right next to Mia's drawing, 2 reminders that even broken men can build something beautiful again. Later that evening, Grace stopped by with Mia, holding a plate of homemade pie. "You didn't think we'd forget you, did you?" she teased. Rex laughed, waving them in. "Come on, you know I can't say no to pie." They sat together under the warm glow of the hanging bulb. Mia showed him her school report. My hero wears a helmet. He read every line carefully, blinking a little too often near the end. "She wrote that herself," Grace said softly. "I can tell," Rex said, smiling through it. Only a real writer could make a grumpy old biker sound as good. Grace chuckled. Maybe she learned from watching you. He raised an eyebrow. Watching me? Yeah, she said. You taught her that heroes don't have to look perfect. They just have to show up. Her voice wavered a little, and Rex looked down, not out of pride, but out of humility so deep it hurt. Mia leaned her head on his arm. You showed up for me. And in that tiny moment, under the soft hum of the lamp, the noise of the past finally faded. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for the bikers, but for the little girl who believed strangers could be safe. One click is your way of saying, the world still has good people. That night, as the town lights dimmed and the stars took their places, Rex wheeled his bike out one last time before turning in. Danny stood by the door, holding his own helmet. Where we're riding tomorrow? He asked. Rex looked at the sky. Wherever someone needs us. They exchanged a nod. No grand speeches. No need for them. Just two men who'd found their way back to each other on the same road that once tore them apart. The engines roared to life, low, steady, powerful. The sound echoed down the empty street like a heartbeat that refused to quit. And as they rode beneath the streetlights, side by side, the world seemed softer, wider, full of stories still waiting to be saved. Because sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather jackets. And sometimes all it takes to change a life is saying yes when a scared little voice says, Will you walk me to school? Moral: kindness doesn't need perfection. It just needs presence. One moment of courage, one act of protection, can rewrite not just a day, but a lifetime. And somewhere, in a small town that learned what bravery truly looks like, an 8-year-old girl sleeps soundly, guarded not by fear, but by love on two wheels.